Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election and basically applying the 2020 polling error for every single swing and battleground state from 538.com is what we're going to be using. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed as we're approaching 3,000 and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Also, if you're interested, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. So I'm going to be filling out every single battleground state based off the 2020 polling error. So we're going to start off with Iowa to start this video. So back in the 2020 election, Donald Trump was supposed to win it by a little bit over 1%. Well, he ended up winning it realistically by 8 percentage points. So they underestimated the former president back in 2020 by literally 7%. So you apply that polling error, actually, Trump today in 2024 is winning this state by double digits. The latest poll has him up by 18%. So if you apply the polling error, he's going to win it by a solid red margin for Donald Trump. He's going to win that by over 10%. And moving on to the state of Ohio. So back in 2020, the polls said Trump was going to win it by nearly 1 percentage point. Well, he ended up winning Ohio by the same margin he won Iowa by, 8%. So yet again, he was underestimated by 7 points in this state. Well, in 2024 now, he's supposed to win it by 9%. So if you apply the polling error, 9 plus 7, obviously 16. So with that being said, he's also going to win the state of Ohio by double digits of a solid red margin in this year's election cycle. So back in 2020, Biden was supposed to win this state even though he'd lost it by 2.5%. And Trump realistically won it by nearly 4 points 4 years ago. So if you apply that polling error, they underestimated the former president in the state of Florida by nearly 6%. So if the election is held today, he's supposed to win it by 8.5 percentage points. So if you apply that polling error, obviously 8 plus 6 is going to be 14%. So yet again, Trump's also going to win the state of Florida by a solid, comfortable margin in 2024. And even a lot of the Hispanic vote in this state is really trending towards the right in favor of Republicans, especially Cuban Americans are trending towards the right. Miami-Dade County went to Biden, but it flipped to DeSantis in the 2022 midterm. So shifts in trends heavily, significantly favor Republicans in this state, and they now lead tremendously in terms of registration. 4 years ago, Democrats actually led. Now Republicans do by nearly 900,000 in terms of voter advantage. And then as for the southern state of Texas, similar to Florida, a large Hispanic population is going to be key to Donald Trump's victory. And considering the border crisis, record number of illegal immigration, Biden is disapproved of immigration more than any other issue by far. And so considering that, back in 2020, Trump was supposed to win Texas by literally 1%, but he ended up winning it by 5 points. So they actually underestimated Trump by exactly 4 percentage points. Now in 2024, he's supposed to win it by 11%. So if you apply that polling error, Trump is going to win Texas by 15 points, a solid, comfortable margin for the former president in this year's election cycle. And obviously, elections are not only based off of polling errors, but this is just, a fun scenario that we are doing in today's video. And now moving on to the state of Colorado. So believe it or not, this state's actually getting a lot bluer. Democrats are gaining in terms of new registered voters in this state. So Colorado is actually a left trendy swing state. Even though it's still considered a swing state, I think Biden is supposed to comfortably win it. But back in 2020, he was supposed to win it by 12.5%. He ended up winning it by 10 points. So they overestimated him by a couple percent. And now in 2024, he's supposed to win it by 8 to 9 points on average. So if you apply that polling error, he's actually going to win it by 7%, which is a likely margin for Joe Biden. He's still comfortably going to win this state ultimately at the end of the day. And then as for New Mexico, Biden was supposed to win this state by almost 12%, and he ended up winning it by roughly 10 to 11 percentage points. So a 1 to 2% polling error is still not enough for Trump to win this state. So at the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to win New Mexico by a likely to arguably a safe margin in this year's election cycle. Both Colorado and New Mexico are really blue states that I don't think is going to be close at all. It's impossible for Donald Trump to make it close or even win it, especially considering it's impossible for Trump to overcome the votes in Albuquerque, a very stronghold Democratic county. For the state of Virginia, Biden was supposed to win it by almost 12% back in 2020. He ended up winning it by actually 10 percentage points. So if you apply that polling error, it's 1 to 2% in favor of Donald Trump. And now in 2024, Biden is winning it according to majority of polls by roughly 4 to 5% on average, which is actually a lean margin. So if you apply a polling error, he's still going to end up winning the state, but it's going to be very close in this year's election cycle. Considering that Donald Trump got endorsed by the governor here, Glenn Youngkin, who is currently sitting at a 56 approval rating, very popular. So that alone can sway the race in favor of Donald Trump, on top of considering that we don't have COVID, which Donald Trump had to face outlash on. We also don't have BLM. We have more third-party candidates, which all can go in favor of Donald Trump altogether. And also, we don't have these major celebrity endorsements in favor of Joe Biden. A lot of them actually regret endorsing him, or they won't. And some of them actually may endorse Donald Trump. So, considering all those factors I just named that were against Trump 4 years ago, we don't have them again. So now, Trump is probably more favorable. And moving on to the state of New Hampshire. Now, one thing to mention is New Hampshire is a very anti-incumbent state, and Donald Trump is a challenger, so that can go in favor of him. But Biden was supposed to win it by 11 points 4 years ago. He ended up winning it by 7%. So if you apply that polling error of 4% advantage for Donald Trump, Biden is actually winning this state according to polling averages in 2024, this election, by 6 points. So considering that they overestimated Biden by 4, Biden's actually going to win it by 2%, so a couple points, which is going to be a lean margin if you apply that polling error. So he's still going to win the state ultimately at the end of the day. And then as for Minnesota, Biden was supposed to win it by 9%. He realistically ended up winning it by the same margin he won New Hampshire by, 7 percentage points. So they overestimated him by exactly 2%. Now you apply that polling error, Biden is actually winning the state by 2% in the 2024 presidential election, according to polling averages from 538.com. So actually, this state is completely toss-up because they overestimated Biden by 2%. So if you apply the polling error, he's only up by 2% right now. So actually, it's a tie at the moment. So we will not be filling out Minnesota in this video. And then as for North Carolina, Biden was supposed to win it by 3% back in 2020, according to those polls. Trump actually ended up winning it by over 1 percentage point. So if you apply that polling error, it's going to go 4 points to the right in favor of Donald Trump from 2024 polling averages. As of today, Trump's winning North Carolina by 6%. So if you apply that polling error of 4%, he's actually going to win it by a margin of 10 percentage points, which is arguably a safe to likely margin, which is extremely good for the former president. The state is actually trending towards the right. Regardless if Mark Robinson does or does not win on the governorship, Trump is expected to outperform him ultimately at the end of the day. And now some polls are saying Mark Robinson is going to win. A recent one actually shows him up by 4 against Josh Stein. So North Carolina, as you can see, clearly is moving towards the right. And then as for the deep southern state of Georgia, Biden won this state mainly due to the reason of high turnout among African American voters, in which he is not expected to crack the nearly 90% he got 4 years ago. Donald Trump is expected to make gains among that specific group. And recent polling has shown him cracking nearly 20%, which is actually enough for him to not only flip the state of Georgia, but also win the election. So 4 years ago, in this exact point in time, Biden was supposed to win it by 1%, and he did win it by 0.3%. So they actually overestimated him by 0.6%, which is actually more on the accurate side. So if you were to apply that polling error, right now in 2024, Trump's supposed to win it by 5 percentage points. So actually, Trump's going to win the state by a lean to likely margin in this year's election cycle by like 5.5 or maybe even 6 points at the end of the day. And if Biden does not hold up to his numbers in stronghold Atlanta, the metropolitan area, and also the suburbs in the state, then he's more than likely going to lose because the margin of error was just so close by 10,000 votes. It was just too small of a victory, and Biden is more than likely going to lose this state in 2024. And then as for Nevada, Biden was expected to win it by literally exactly 8 percentage points. He ended up winning it by only 2. So if you apply that polling error, he was overestimated by a staggering 6%. And now in 2024, Trump's going to win it by 4.7%. So if you apply the 2020 polling error in the state, they overestimated Biden by 6 points. Now Trump's probably going to win it by 10 percentage points, which is going to be considered a safe margin ultimately at the end of the day. And now moving on to the state of Arizona before we move on to the Rust Belt states. Yet again, this is a border state, so this issue alone can go in favor of the former president on top of the economy and inflation, which Biden is also struggling on significantly. His approval rating is absolutely in the gutter, below 40%, currently at 38%. And any candidate, especially an incumbent, running up for re-election who's below 40%, if you take a look at history, is going to lose re-election, and Joe Biden is probably on track to lose. And at this point in time, back in 2020, Biden was supposed to win the state by 4%. Even though he still won it, it was by literally 11,000 votes. So 0.3% was the margin. So they actually overestimated Biden by roughly 4%. So if you apply that polling error, Trump's supposed to win it now by 4 points. He's going to end up winning it by 8%, a likely margin at the end of the day if you apply that polling error in the state of Arizona. And then moving on to the three most important Rust Belt states before we close out this video, starting off with Wisconsin, in which Biden won Wisconsin by 20,000 votes. So if Trump flips that 20,000, he's automatically going to win this state, which I think it's not that hard to do. I think it's very flippable, especially considering that the margin of error was by 0.6%. And he was supposed to win this state by 6.5%. So they actually overestimated him by exactly 6 points. And now in 2024, Trump's supposed to win the state by 0.2%. So if you apply the polling error from 2020, Trump wins Wisconsin by 6%, which is going to be considered a lean margin at the end of the day. And now moving on to Michigan, there's a few things I want to point out in this state. Donald Trump received more votes than Biden, and he's not even the incumbent. Joe Biden is the incumbent and had no primary contest challenger and still received less votes than Donald Trump. And Trump is facing a real challenger opponent like Nikki Haley. On top of the 100,000 people that already voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries in the state, so that alone goes to show you that Biden probably does not have the enthusiasm, and Trump is on track to win Michigan. And let's see the polling error 4 years ago. At this exact point in time, Biden was supposed to win Michigan by 10 points. This is a significant error because he only won it by literally almost 3 points, so it's going to be an overestimate of Joe Biden by 7%. And now in 2024, Trump's supposed to win it by a margin of 0.1%. So if you apply the polling error, Trump's going to win it by a likely margin of 7 percentage points exactly at the end of the day. If the election was based off of polling errors, obviously it's not, but this is just a fun scenario. And now moving on to the last state before we end off this video, because obviously Minnesota was an exact tie. Pennsylvania, Biden's own home state. So Biden was supposed to win it by a margin of 5 percentage points. He ended up winning it by 1.2% to be exact, a margin of 81,000 votes. So that's actually going to be a polling error of roughly 4 percentage points. And now in 2024, according to 538, Trump has the advantage by 1%. So if you apply that polling error, Donald Trump is the victor in the state of Pennsylvania by roughly 5 percentage points, which is going to be considered a lean margin if the election was based off of polling errors at the end of the day. I think it honestly comes down to Erie County, Central County. If Trump can make significant gains, I think he's on track to win the state. And inflation, the economy, and all that matters to the union workers and also college-educated voters. If Trump can make gains, I think he could win this state. And also, if Biden does not hold up to his numbers in some of these stronghold Democratic counties like Pittsburgh and the Philadelphia suburbs, the suburbs are very important. I think Trump is going to win the state. But if Biden were to win Pennsylvania, it's probably because he's going to get carried by the woman vote, probably issues like abortion, which this is not midterm, so I don't think that's going to matter. So that's pretty much it. Donald Trump gets 312 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 216 because Minnesota was a complete toss-up if the election was based off of polling errors, which is obviously not. Your overall thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What states you agree with or disagree with, and do you agree with this overall map? And one last final reminder before I close out this video is to subscribe as we're approaching 3,000 and click the bell so you don't miss out on MMA content. Also, we have memberships. You can find the links to that in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.